give everybody a chance to get on as we get ready to get started. And so, to come up on anybody's phone?
Yeah.
All right, we're up and going. So. Okay. A couple of things real as far as our prayer list and things that yep, there's Jessie. Jessie got home this afternoon and she's got 2 down, 6 to go. 3 weeks apart. So basically 2 weeks from Tuesday will be our next one, and we're going from there. Emily Price, we've had on our prayer list a little bit. She got out of the hospital and she is doing outpatient dialysis now, and that seems to be going pretty well for her. Gail Podersky had good news from her doctor visit and everything, but her mother-in-law, Georgia.
Joyce Paddock.
Doris.
Joyce.
Oh, Joyce, okay. Paddock. And she is in need of some prayers and things, so we want to remember her, and I think that's about everybody that we had from
Dina
this one.
Foxworthy that we've been praying for. They moved her to Danville Rehab, and she's getting better, but it's slow. But she was able to put her own clothes in her drawer. And
in Danville, Indiana, or Danville,
right behind the hospital.
All right. So, Dina Foxworthy that we've had on we actually had a phone call prayer chain for her because they weren't holding any hope for her and for the family, and she's now in rehab and it's slow going, but she's getting better. So, all right. And then, of course, we want to remember the people in the Ukraine and everything that they're going through. So let's pray. Father, we just thank you for this day, this beautiful weekend that we've had, and this opportunity to be together in your house, Lord. And we just pray for these people that we've just mentioned and all the things that we mentioned, the praises and the prayers and the concerns. And Lord, we do lift up the people of the Ukraine and just ask that you be with all of them there. Help bring this thing to a peaceful close, that the people can have their nation and their homes. And Lord, we just thank you for our nation, our homes, and the freedoms that we have and the security that we have living where we do. And just help us not to take those things for granted. We thank you for your word, for the opportunity to have it, live it, study it, and all these things, Lord, and just ask that you be with us on this evening. And all these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. All righty, we are in Genesis 32. And we're actually ready for verse 19, but we're going to start back with 17. So it says, and he, which is Jacob, he instructed the one in the lead, when my brother Esau sees you and asks, to whom do you belong, where you're going, and who owns these animals in front of you, then you are to say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift to my lord Esau, and he is coming behind us. He also instructed the second, the third, and all the others who followed the herds. You are to say the same thing to Esau when you meet him, and be sure to say, your servant Jacob is coming behind us, for he thought, I will pacify him with these gifts that I am sending on ahead. Later, when I see him, perhaps he will receive me. So Jacob's gifts went on ahead of him, but he himself spent the night in the camp. So, all right. So, we talked about he's on his way home. He's going there, and he knows he's going to be meeting Esau. And, of course, the last encounter that he had with Esau was Esau was going to try to kill him because of the whole birthright thing and the blessing. And so the irony of it is Jacob stole his, or not, I'm sorry, he didn't steal, he bought his birthright with basically a bowl of stew. And then he did steal the blessing, which was about the promised land, the descendants, all those things that went along with that. And so everything when it came to the birthright, that meant that Jacob was to have 2/3 of whatever their father had, and Esau to have 1/3. But as it turns out, we see that, Jacob ended up with nothing that his father Isaac had. Esau ends up with all of it. But Jacob's going back, not knowing whether Esau still wants to kill him or not. And as he sent servants to Esau, they come back with the news that said, he's coming to meet you now with 400 soldiers. And that was a huge army back then. And so he's concerned. And so first thing he does, he gets this gift of, we said it was almost 600 animals that he's sending out in stages to give to Esau. And that's where we're at today, as he has separated them all out, and he's told them, and the verse before we start reading, keep some space before you, so that they get a gift. He rides a little bit more, and there's another group of animals that's a gift. He rides a little bit more, and there's another group. So that through all of these things, it's just one present after another, one demonstration of goodness or graciousness after another. And so he instructed the first one, these are the words you're supposed to use. When Esau meets you and says, to whom these belong and where are you going, who owns them? They belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau, and he is coming behind us. And so that's where we pick up today. So he also instructed the second ones, the third ones, and all the rest of them to follow to say the same things. These belong to Jacob. He is giving them to my servant Esau. And of course, they wouldn't have known. They would have officially not known. They would have suspected that this is, when this guy comes riding up to them with 400 soldiers, that this is who they are or who he is, and they're going to say these same things to him. And so Jacob is, he was a lot of things, but he was also a strategic thinker, and he's got a plan all laid out about how this is all going to go to try to, he's doing it in stages, hoping to help pacify him. It's not one big gift. And it's like we talked about before, you can have somebody that gives you, everything at once in one big package and one big group, or if you stage them out and give a little bit at a time, it seems like you're getting one gift after another. So that's what he's doing. And it says here in verse 20, for he thought, I will pacify him with these gifts that I'm sending on ahead, so maybe when I see him, he will receive me. Because also with each one of them, they were to say, these gifts are for you, and they're from Jacob, he's coming behind us. These gifts are for you, they're from Jacob, he's coming behind us, and all that, hoping that by the time it gets to Jacob, that Esau has warmed up a little bit and is maybe not so angry, and all these. So in verse 21 says, so Jacob's gifts went on ahead of him, but he himself spent the night in the camp. So he's already sent those out before daylight. They're going to have almost a day's lead on them. So verse 22, that night Jacob got up, took his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons across the ford of the Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. The man asked him, what is your name? Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and men and have overcome. Jacob said, please tell me your name. But he replied, why do you ask my name? Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, it is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. The sun rose up above him, and he passed Peniel, or may say Penuel. They are basically the same word. And he was limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. So it's nighttime, and he takes them across at night across the Jabbok River. Now, one of the things you can just about tell every time in the Bible, or actually in ancient times of that time period, when someone crosses a river, it is always a significant event. Jacob crossed the river as he got out of the land of Laban. He crosses the river, now getting into the land of Esau. He's going to cross the river again as he goes into the land of Canaan. Each one of those have a significance with them. Leaving one land and entering another one, coming into somebody else's territory, all of those things together. Now, we don't get it in the English, but there is a play on words. He crossed the Jabbok River, which is actually in the Hebrew is Jabbok, and it is Jacob, and wrestling is Jabek. So all these words are just a couple of letters off. So there's a little word play in here with all of them together. But he takes his 2 maidservants, his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. Now, how many kids did he have? 11. How many? 11. Nope. He has 12. He has a daughter, Dinah. She's gonna come in really heavily. Now, some people get all wrapped up in that it just says he took his 11 sons and not Dinah. The whole point of that statement is that it's the sons of which they counted everything, and it was a patriarchal society. Now, it doesn't count out women. Women play a very strong role. Rebecca is the one that helped to determine who was going to get the blessing. Sarah was the one that said, talking about Hagar's son, he will not inherit with my son. And it's not just a matter of the possessions. They're talking about the blessing from God. And we know that within the Torah, the first 5 books, there's Miriam, and who's the one Alex was talking about last week in Sunday school. Those of you that were at Sunday school, remember? Rahab, the prostitute. And she's the only woman out of the Torah, and that is mentioned in the lineage of Jesus. There are 3 women mentioned. None of them were Israelite women, by the way, and so it does. Just because they're not mentioning it here doesn't mean that they don't put emphasis on women and the roles. But the way that they did things in that day is they counted everything by the sons. And when you get down to the dividing or the naming of the 12 tribes, the sons of Jacob, there was not a tribe for Dinah, right? There was of the 12 sons. So that's what we're talking about here. The 2 maidservants, 11 sons, and his 2 wives, and they got them across the ford of the Jabbok. Now, that sounds like, he just took them. The fords of the Jabbok River were, even today, that river lays in a big valley. It drains down to the Jordan River just north of the Dead Sea, just north of Jericho, as it comes in. But the banks are really steep, so this is something that basically says he was helping them down. He wanted to make sure they got across the river okay. He gets them over on the other side, so they're able to go back out in the morning. And so then he goes back, because that's not the end of it. We think people talk like he went back, but then he goes over and sends across all of his possessions. He takes his wife and his wives and his children across and makes sure they're across. He sends the possessions across. So it shows us that he was concerned for his family. He was making sure the family did all right. The rest of them are possessions. If they make it, that's fine. If they don't, that's okay too. So he sends them across. We don't see him going back and forth, because he crossed the ford with the wife and the kids. He doesn't cross it with his possessions. So he sends his possessions over, and he's there alone. Now, why he didn't go on over, the Bible doesn't tell us. Maybe he wanted to spend the night. He doesn't know. Is this going to be his last night upon the earth? or has he only got 2 or 3 more? What happens if Esau's still not happy with him? He's got 400 men. Jacob doesn't have an army. He's got servants. He's got 11 sons. A couple of them may be fighting age, but that's not going to hold up to 400 soldiers. So, it almost, to me, this is me. This is not, Bible scholars or anything like that. I think he stayed there alone to kind of get himself together and to try to figure things out. What am I going to do? To think about what he's going to happen, because otherwise he's got his wives, his children, his servants, his flocks. He's got all those things. When you're in the midst of all those, you may not be able to think straight. So he's there taking some time by himself, trying to figure out what is going to happen the next few days, and all of that together. So while he's there, what happens?
He fought with someone.
Yeah, he wrestles with somebody all night. Now,
Actually, or in his mind?
no, actually, because he gets hurt, and it's all night that is remaining. What time of the night it is, I don't know, because it says that night, verse 22 starts off, that night he took his wives and his kids. That night he sends his possessions over. It's all in that same night. So, this wasn't a thing that he is struggling with this man from dark till dawn. It's just whenever the rest of it is over, the rest of the night, he thinks he's going to be there by himself. And now he's got to struggle. And it's kind of indicative with he's sitting there struggling. Jacob's whole life has been a struggle, right? He struggled with his brother, and even with getting the birthright. It was a struggle getting to his uncle. He had a struggle with his uncle the whole time. And he almost had a struggle with him coming home. His whole life, in one way or another, has been a struggle. And now, what may be his last night, as far as he's thinking, he is struggling with a man, or wrestling. The term for wrestling is, like I said, it's just really close to his name anyway, and till daybreak. And so now there's a big debate about, was this God? Because he says, I've seen the face of God, Peniel, which means God's face. Or the face of God. But is this God? Is it an angel? I've seen it referred to in 2 or 3 ways. Was it God taking the form of a man? Because has God done that before? Yeah, he did it with Abraham, with his grandfather. That as he was walking through on the way to Lot, there was God and 2 angels. The 2 angels went on down to Sodom, and God went about his business. Basically, it doesn't tell us, that he ascended, dissolved, transport, or whatever. Just that after the conversation was over and they walked away, when they got to Sodom, God was no longer there. So it could be God in a man form. It could be an angel that God has sent. But he wrestled with him all night long in human form, whatever it was, in a way that you could grab, fight, whatever. This is in a physical sense. And so he wasn't able to, the man he was wrestling with, and the Torah does say man, it was somebody in human form. He gets to the end of the evening, about the time daybreak's coming up, and he cannot overpower Jacob in this human form. And so what does he do?
He touches his hip.
Yeah, he basically says, I could hurt you really bad if I wanted to. So it shows that he has some sort of power, which angels have that same sort of power. And to say that, I've been allowing you to struggle with me all night. I could have ended this early. And touches his hip and puts his hip out of socket. So the man said, let me go. It's daybreak. So even with Jacob with his hip out of joint, is not letting him go. However it is he's holding on to him, whether he's got his arms around his waist, around his throat, around his leg, if he's holding on his clothes, whatever. And Jacob realizes that this is not just a normal person. For one thing, he might have thought it was a person he's wrestling with until all he does is touches him. It doesn't say that he got a hold of his leg. I mean, if you've ever seen real wrestling matches and all that, every once in a while somebody gets a bone out of joint and all of that. That's not what it says. He just touched it and it went out of joint. So Jacob realizes this is more than just a human that I am wrestling with. And so what does he ask him? Bless me. I'll turn you loose when I get a blessing. And so then it's interesting because he doesn't really get a blessing. He said the divine being, which is the best way to put it, because we really don't know what it was, whether it was God or an angel. It is somebody from heaven, a divine being. And he's asking, what is your name? Right? Mm-hmm. And so also, and he replies, Jacob. And the deceiver or the grabber or and like I said, even that term grabber, it doesn't mean like just to grab it. It means to jerk it or take it away from somebody else. And so the man then says to what to him? Yeah.
Israel's gonna be his name.
And we lose it in the English. Your name is no longer the grabber or the deceiver. Your name is now struggles with God. That was his name. We say Jacob, the Jews call it Jacob, and but that's not his name. His name it goes from being the deceiver or the grabber to being the one who struggles with God. And it's kind of the same thing. We lose it when we think every time of like Isaac's name. Isaac's name was he laughs. And that's almost as bad as being a boy named Sue, the Johnny Cash thing about a few years ago. Because that was what people called him. That was, they didn't, Isaac, if you said Isaac, it was he laughs. If you said Jacob, it was he grabs or he deceives. And how would you like to have that name and try to deal with somebody? To have, your name is the deceiver and I want to do business with you type thing. And now his name is going to be the one who struggles with God. And just think about that. Now, it's interesting because he gives him that name. Now, there's always two things about it. And you're going to, as you read the Bible, both the Old Testament and the New Testament, we read about people's names being changed. Can you think of any besides the patriarchs? Paul, Saul, Paul, Peter. Your name is no longer Simon. It is now Petra. Or actually, in the Hebrew, it would have been, or in the Aramaic they spoke, it was Cephas, which means the rock. Peter or Petra. Peter is the English form of the Greek word Petra. But there were also some that weren't so good. When you get to the end of the Kings and Chronicles, where the kingdom is about to collapse, there's two things in that. One, Pharaoh takes over. He kills good King Josiah, puts his son on the throne, and changes his name. Anytime you change somebody's name, it means I am more powerful than you. I control you. You belong to me. Because otherwise, would we let somebody change our name? No. And so we have one there. We have the Babylonians when they come in and conquer Jerusalem for the first time. And they put their king on the throne, who was a descendant of David, but they changed his name to show, now you belong to me. And I'll give you even a more recent, it's not a biblical thing, But there is a group in my family, my father's brothers, that spell their name B-Y instead of B-E-Y. And my actually I have 4 cousins from my uncle's, well, his name was Stewart, but they pronounced it Sturt, Uncle Sturt. That's the Missouri way of saying it. And so anyway, his 2 sons, his 2 daughters, names on their birth certificates were B.Y. Because when my Uncle Sturt went in the Air Force, they wrote it wrong to begin with and wrote it as B.Y. And he told them it is B.E.Y. And they said, it is what we say that it is. And so they left it as B.Y. in the Air Force, which meant, and he was a career man, so when all of his children were born, they couldn't make it right on their birth certificate, or the Air Force would not pay for that. And so there is 4 of, and I don't think either one of the boys had kids, so it'll stop with them, but there are 4 of them that were named B.Y. because the government said, you belong to us, and we will determine what your name is. And I went through that in the Marine Corps. I had a kid whose name was Mulison, and they told him it is Mulison, is what the drill sergeant said. And he tried to correct him one time, and the drill sergeant, through the course of all the other stuff, said, your name is what I will call you whatever I want to call you, and that is what your name will be, which taught all the rest of us, I don't care if he calls us Sally, that's what your name's going to be. You don't want to get into that kind of a conversation with the drill sergeant. So this is a man showing him, this is also saying, I am more powerful than you, which also tends to make us think more it was God. And he tells him what his name will be, that I am changing your name. And it is struggles with God, because he says, you have struggled with God and who? And with men, and have overcome. Then Jacob says what? The man asked Jacob, what is your name? Jacob answered him. Now Jacob says, what is your name? And he said, none of your business. Basically, why do you ask my name? And he didn't answer him. He's basically saying, you have no authority. You have no standing. You have no right to know what my name is, because you are not on my level. Now, whether it was even an angel, because we only know the names of 2 angels. Of all the angels out there, we only know the name of 2. You know what 2 they are? Michael and Gabriel. And so there is no right to ask what their names are. Even when Moses asked God at the burning bush, what is your name? And God just said, my name is I am. You know, not really my name, but my name is who I am. And our name represents us. And so, you know, with all of that, he's saying, you don't have any right to ask what my name is. I'm giving you a name. You don't have the authority to ask me my name. So then he blessed him there. Now, not only did God give the Jacob the new name of struggles with God, what else did that do? There's 2-3 things about it. Number one is that it's in not just what God was saying about Jacob, but what he was saying about people in general. Is it okay to struggle with God?
Probably not.
No, actually it is. Because the Bible is full of people struggling with God, or wrestling with God is maybe a better way to put it. Do we, as people of faith, do we wrestle with God today?
Yeah,
We do.
don't usually win.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes we win, sometimes we don't. But sometimes it's just in, you know, there's a lot of examples of that. And actually, Abraham wrestled with God. You know, he challenged God. Are you really going to kill the town? What if there's 50 righteous people in the town? You going to do it if there's 50? No, I won't do it if there's 50. And so it gets on down. We have Psalms that say, Lord, why are you doing this? Why aren't you acting? We have prophets that say, why are these things happening? One of the biggest ones that struggled with God was one of the shortest prophet books in the Bible. And can you think of who that was? And he said, I'm not doing what you want me to do. Matter of fact, to show you I'm not going to do it, I'm going the other direction. Who? Jonah. And even as the people were being saved, and he's sitting there up underneath the broom bush, and he's saying, I don't want those people to be saved. God did. But we struggle today with at times with saying, God, why are you doing this? Why are these things happening? Why am I going through this? Or somebody that I care about.
We're
Why
not
are
to
they going?
question, though, are we?
Hmm?
We're not to question.
Well, sometimes there's a difference between challenging God in a question and telling God that he's wrong, which is what the questioning thing is. But it's okay to ask questions. The Psalms have several references to where the psalmist is saying, why? Why is this happening? Why are our people going through what they're going through? It's not even just things of individuals. We have even the martyrs in heaven when we went through Revelation that were under the altar. What were they saying? How long, O Lord? How long are you going to let this go on? These are people in heaven that are saying, how long is this going to go on? When are you going to act? When are these things going to occur? And when you think about even like the Jews during the Holocaust, or Jews all over the world that were praying about it, saying, why? We even today, if you want to make it really relative, there are people struggling right now. There are churches, there are others in the Ukraine that are going on. Why is this happening? And God could make it to where we don't struggle with God, then we'd be robots. And it's one thing to tell God He doesn't know what He's doing, but it's a different thing to say, Lord, I don't understand why are these happening to where we struggle with our faith. And when you look at the patriarchs, they all had times in which they had their times of doubt, and we even talked about that with Jacob and things, and Abraham had his times of doubt. Isaac had his times of doubt. When they were more concerned about their life, even, who is that woman that's with you? She's my sister. And that sort of thing, because they, instead of having, we would think they would have full faith, but it tells us that it's okay. The nation of Israel is called the one who struggles with God. Is there any other nation on the earth that is called struggles with God? And that's what it is in their native language. The name of their country is struggles with God. And there's one thing out there too about the Jewish people, and especially in the nation. The Jews are probably the only faith people out there that have what we would call secular. They have what's called secular Jews. We don't have secular Christians. They don't jive. There are not secular Buddhist or anything like that, but there are secular Jews, because both their race and their faith are called by the same thing. So you have some Jews that are Jews by blood that may not even worship. They don't go to synagogue. They don't practice their faith, and so you can have secular Jews, and you have others that are true to their faith. And there was a story about an Orthodox rabbi that was a fairly young guy. He and his wife had 7 kids, and she died in a tragic accident. And another pretty strong Jewish person went in to look at him or to talk to him, almost like a counseling thing, like a minister would come to the house or something along that line. And as he walked in, the Jews have a saying, and I can't pronounce it really well, but the words are almost the same, that man plans, God laughs. And the word for plan and the word for laughs they sound almost the same. And that's what the young rabbi looked up at the other man and said when he walked in, which means, we do these things. We don't understand what God does, but some of that struggling with God, both with Jacob, with the nation, with Christians today, with people all along, is that we have free will. God gives us free will. We are free thinking people. We are here from the time of Adam and Eve, in which they could choose whether to partake of the fruit in the garden or not. And so it also it tells us that God says it's okay to struggle with God, to wrestle with the things that God is doing, to not maybe understand them fully, and to have those thoughts in our minds. Because some people think that you have any kind of doubt of God, you have any kind of question of God, it means that your faith is not there. But you look at Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, you look at Peter and some of the rest, or all the apostles for that matter, for everybody having their doubts and running away. But even after that, of some of the times that they struggled, that people struggle with our faith. The only time that you don't, when you get into so much of a zeal that you don't ever question anything, that's when bad things happen. Within just about any kind of faith, or anybody that is so absolutely sure about what they're doing and thinking that it is absolutely right, then that's when you have problems. And no matter whether it be a Christian, a Jew, an atheist, a communist, or anything like that, when you get so sure that you're right and you don't question, you don't struggle with what is right or wrong, then bad things occur. And there was a guy one time that used to have there's a guy by the name of Dennis Prager, that's probably one of the best Jewish scholars going. He started Prager University. He debates all over the country. He's had a call-in radio program for probably 35 years, guest speaker, and all these different things. And on his radio program one time, he is Jewish as it gets. There was a lady that called in and said, you've always said that I can ask you any kind of question that's there. And he said, right. And she said, okay, well, my question is, why aren't you a Muslim? And he said, it comes back to the definitions of it, because he's Jewish. He said, if you ask, the word Islam actually means obey God. No question, no anything. And matter of fact, you can suffer greatly within the Muslim faith of Islam for not doing exactly what God says. He said, I would rather, instead of blindly obeying, I would rather have a thing that I can talk to God, I can debate with God, I can struggle with those things, and because that's the difference in the two faiths. And so that's what God is saying here, even by calling him that, by naming the nation that, by telling us it's okay to have our struggles with God. Now, in the end, God wins, and you have to trust and to go through all that. But here, God is giving them that name. So let me do something here real quick. I need to swap a cord, because I got one here. That's a good thing. Sorry about that. So anyway, he names him. Then he tells Jacob, you have no right to know my name. You do not have the authority, the power, the standing to question my name, but you belong to me. We belong to God. So he names that place the face of God. And it's one of those that, a lot of the church fathers, a lot of things that happen get names to signify what this place means. What was the other place that Jacob named? That was Alex on his journey out. It wasn't a wrestle, but he had a similar thing with what he saw, and he named the place according to what he saw. And the old song, I am climbing Jacob's ladder higher, higher. So what did he name the place where he saw the ladder? This is surely the house of God, Beth El, house of God. He said, now I've seen the face of God. He named the place the face of God, Peniel, and or Penuel, because he said, I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. Now, he didn't see God in all of his glory, because God even tells Moses, you can't look on me and live. You can see my back. You can't see my front. And with others too. So, he is, now the night is over, as we see in verse 31, and the sun rose above him as he was passing that place. And he was doing what? Limping. Because of his hip. His hip's out of place. So now, this is something that people take literally, although in this one it is literal. Therefore, to this day. Now, that term is said a lot in the Bible. And to this day, these things are done. And we read that as to this day. Now, this day that is written here was about 3,600 years ago. And, or about, I guess that was when it would have occurred. It would have been written about 3,200 years ago, give or take 100 years, as Moses was writing these things. So, but you always got to watch because people will read something in the Bible and it says to this day, and we always think that's to now. Now, I will tell you, what happens to this day that they're saying?
They don't eat the sinew of the thigh. They don't eat the tendon attached to the.
Do you know that in kosher bakeries, I guess it wouldn't matter in a bakery, in kosher butcher shops, Jewish butcher shops that follow the Jewish dietary laws, guess what they do? They remove that tendon. It's called a sciatic tendon, where you get the and so this is one place that actually means yes to this day. It is in the Jewish law even today that they are not to eat that tendon, that they're not to do that. It goes along with something else that is occurring in some faith traditions at this point in time. And do you know what that is? They don't do it as much anymore as they did when I was a kid. Of course, I grew up in a Catholic town, but or a very strong Catholic. It wasn't the whole town was a Catholic, but they had 3 big Catholic churches, and Catholic. They still have a Catholic high school, one of the few that's in Indiana right now, and all of that.
Fish on Friday.
Huh?
Fish on Friday.
They don't eat, they don't eat meat during Lent. And especially some don't eat meat at all during Lent. Some don't eat it on Fridays, and for a long time, some people did not eat meat on Friday, period. And why is that? Because Jesus died on Friday, and so you don't eat meat. Meat comes from mammals, humans and all that. But anyway, so because of the flesh of the body, they don't eat meat on Fridays, or sometimes they don't eat meat at all during Lent. It's all fish and all that. And it's one of those things that all of that, whether it's the Jews today, the people that don't eat meat on Friday during Lent, all those things, it helps us to recall that tradition. It's almost like this is way even before Passover, but Passover is the same sort of thing. It's almost even like both our 4th of July, in which we recount the things that our country did, and we talk about those and all those, because that gives us that continuity all the way back to the Revolutionary War. Or like Thanksgiving, when we come together as families and we recount the reasons to be thankful and all that. It's kind of that same sort of thing, which it gives us that unity, that continuity, It gives us that tradition that ties us back together as a people, not just for a generation or two or three, but all the way back to a significant point in history that happened to us. And so we recount that because, there is a difference in those days than other days. And it means more to us. And if we forget those days, when we forget about the actions that are there and the things that we do to commemorate them, then then we lose those significances. Just like now, I mean, where our family is, ours used to be a hyphen right there, like an O'Neill and all that. But it's been a long time, I think, since anybody's had corned beef and cabbage on St. Patrick's Day. That used to be a big thing and all that. So, but it's more than that. So even today, this is one of the few places in the Bible where it says "still to this day," that we can say "still to this day," those things are done. All right. So chapter 33. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maidservants. He put the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. He went ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. Now, just think about that first statement.
Well, hello.
Oh, man, yeah. I mean, this is it. Am I going to die?
So he must have already received all those gifts, and I'm still here, and what's going to happen?
Yep. He's received all the gifts, and there he is. He's still coming. It doesn't say where they were riding hard or just coming. Actually, it doesn't say even that they were riding. They could have been walking, which was probably more likely. But I think every time I've ever seen it in any kind of movie or video or anything, they're always come riding up on horses. But it never mentions them riding anywhere that I can recall. But he looks up and he sees them coming with his 400 men. And so he's thinking, am I going to die? And what's the second question? Is my family going to die? And so he divides the family, right? Almost like he did the animals. And so, because he's concerned and he wants to make sure that the family survives. So how does he divide them? It's kind of obvious.
Looks like the least important to the most.
Exactly, the least important to the most. He puts his beloved wife that he worked 14 years for and the son that she finally had where? In the rear. The ones that were the maidservants and their kids, they are in the front. And then Leah and her children are in the middle, or right before Rachel. And so you can see that he is putting them in their order of importance to him as they go. Now, but what does he do?
He goes forward.
He what?
He goes forward and bows 7 times.
He actually doesn't just go forward, he gets in front of the family. And, with all the things he's done, he does put himself between Esau and the family. Even with laying them out in the order from least important to most important, it says, he himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. So he was not a man we don't ever see him being afraid. He did some things, but like I said, he was a strategic thinker. So even if I go up and I'm first, and he has not, he's still just as angry as he was. If he takes it out on me, maybe my family will be spared before he gets to the family, rather than putting the family in front. And they bear the wrath as he's getting to them. And then it would have looked cowardly. You put the women and children in front. He's doing the brave thing and putting himself ahead. And what does he do to his brother?
bows down 7 times.
Yeah, not just this is a full, almost putting your face to the ground. Some people say that he actually laid down on the ground in front of him 7 times. But it doesn't really say that he went all the way prostrate. But he did bow down very low. Now, do you know why people bow more than anything?
Show respect.
Well, that's kind of where it came to, but that's not how that all started and what it really means. If you are concerned about that person in front of you, what do you want to do with them? You want to keep your eyes on them, right? So, because you can't defend yourself. If you can't see they're getting their knife out, their bow out, their hand out, whatever, they're getting their sword ready to cut your head off. You can't defend yourself if you don't have your eyes on them. And so to bow to someone was a symbol of complete submission, because you're saying, I am putting myself before you in a way that I cannot defend myself, in which I cannot look at you, I won't see what's coming. And so it is an act of total submission, because there is nothing more that you can do other than maybe turn around and put your back to him, which would be a big insult. So he doesn't do it just once. How many times? 7, to show that this is total submission, total humility before him. So then we have verse 4. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him, threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and children. Who are these with you? He asked. And Jacob answered, they are the children God has graciously given your servant. Then the maidservants and their children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all came Joseph and Rachel, and they bowed down too. So, is Esau mad? No. There's been 20 years. And all the things that he thought he was losing, he seems to have gained, right? Now, there is a little irony here, because do you remember what the blessing was? That your brother will bow down to you. And who is that blessing given to? Jacob. But what's happening here? Jacob is bowing down to him. Does that mean the blessing wasn't valid? No. Because the blessing wasn't just about the two of them. It was about their descendants, and who was going to be the stronger of the two with their descendants and all those. And so this is not a reversal or against the blessing. This is too early for the blessing to really be into effect, because it wasn't about them. It was going to be about their descendants. So he throws his arms around his neck and he kissed him. And they wept together. And I'm sure, Esau's just glad to meet his brother. Why do you think Jacob was weeping?
Relief.
Relief, absolutely. There is no doubt. The pressure is off. I am safe. My wives are safe. My children are safe. Everything's good with the world. And so then, and as you can see that, Esau up to this point hasn't even noticed the women and the children, and he asks, who are these with you? Because he doesn't know, are they family or are they servants? He doesn't know. He's already seen all kinds of servants and things bringing these things apart. So who are these? And so Jacob says what?
Children God has given me.
Yeah, he's actually making 2 different kind of comments here. What is the first one? God has given them to me. And what else? I am your servant. He keeps going back to that. He's still not totally out of the woods or in his thinking. He's still not feeling 100% safe, because he's still being submissive to his brother. So then what do the wives and the children do? They all come up and bow. Now, whether, and there's kind of 2 thoughts here. One of them is that they were They were watching to see what Jacob did. And when they saw Jacob bow down 7 times, they knew that they needed to bow to him. The other view is that he's already had that conversation with them, and they know what's going on, and they're aware of that, and they may not have seen it at all. I'm kind of with the second group, because I find it hard to believe that through all this time and with all this stuff going on and with all this division of sending the gifts out in stages and lining them up in their stages behind them, and Jacob going in the middle, and all the other things that are going on, that Jacob hasn't related to them the situation why he left, the situation they may be getting into, how powerful Esau is after he heard about the 400 soldiers and all that. So I think they are fully aware of what the situation is in which they are standing. It'd be hard not to seeing all those things, and with Jacob not talking about it, and to think that Jacob never mentioned anything to them. So they all bowed down. And so then Esau asked, "What do you mean by all these droves that I met?" And which Jacob replies, "To find favor in your eyes, my lord." But Esau said, "I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." "No, please," said Jacob. "If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God, now that you have received me favorably. Please accept the present that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need." And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted it. So he's seen these things, and I'm sure they've told him. Well, either they've told him and he wasn't sure and he's just checking, or he never stopped to ask him. But it looks like he never stopped to ask him. Because is he interested in all these different flocks and herds? No, he's interested in hooking up with his brother. So I don't think he asked anybody along the way. They were given their instructions. These are gifts from to Esau from your servant Jacob, and he's coming along behind. And each one of them was to say that. I don't think he ever stopped. Or why would he say, "What do you mean by all these droves I met?" And Jacob's pretty honest with him, right? What's he tell him?
My favor.
I didn't want you to be mad anymore. I'm trying to find favor in your eyes. I wanted this to be a good meeting. And Esau said, "What?"
He has plenty.
"I have plenty. And so keep what you have for yourself." Did he have plenty? He had everything that Isaac had, which was everything that Abraham had. Because remember, everything Abraham had went to Isaac. Abraham had his own army of over 300 men, plus his servants and his flocks. Abraham, he would have been, in that era, to kind of put it into perspective, he would have been the Jeff Bezos of the community. He would have been the richest man that anybody knew of or heard about and all that. And so he's given that to Isaac. Now, who has that? Esau has it. And he's wealthy enough that he's supporting a 400-man army on his own. And so he says, "I have plenty, my brother." Now, you see the difference there and how they referred to each other? What's the difference?
Jacob says, your servant, whereas
Yep. Jacob said, "I'm your servant." Esau refers to him as not my servant. He refers to him as my brother. So Esau is trying to be there and to keep it on a brotherly thing. Jacob is still wanting to lower himself and allow Esau to be elevated. So verse 10, "No, please," said Jacob. "If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift." So he's still saying, I still want to make you happy if you. And so what's he really saying here? If I found favor in your eyes, keep this gift.
I really want you to have it.
No, not really. He puts a condition on it. What's that condition?
if I find favor.
If I found favor with you, if you're happy with me, if everything's cool, demonstrate it by taking my gift. You know, because if Esau then says, I'm not taking it, what's he just said?
Oops.
Yeah,
Things aren't good.
we're not back to normal. There's still a problem here. So this is a condition. If I have found favor in your eyes, if we are good, if you're no longer mad, prove it by accepting this gift. And so the and because what's he telling?
What Jacob said to Esau?
Yeah.
Seeing his face was like seeing the face of God.
Now he just saw the face of God, or so he thought. You know, 1, 2, 3 nights before, whenever it was. So now he says, seeing your face is like seeing the face of God. Was he blowing smoke at him, or was he being serious?
I bet you're blowing smoke.
Now, you know, he's been praying about it. You know, and God has told him to go back. He's been concerned. Seeing that, you know, he's wrestled with God the night before. And when you got to kind of, he could be blowing smoke at him, but what I think he's actually saying is having us back together it's like, you know, seeing God itself. That only God could do this. Only us coming back together, and it's one of those. You know, you think about his relief that he has, and now he's safe. His family's safe. All those things. The only thing that could be better than that would be to see the face of God, and to have that kind of relationship, and to have that kind of relief, that kind of joy. And everything, because all of it's over. And I know we're running over a little bit, but I want to finish out this paragraph. So one of the things I want you to note in verse 11, it says, please accept the present that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me. Do you know what the Hebrew word is for present? Blessing. So he actually says here, please accept the blessing that I brought to you, for God has been gracious to me and I have all I need. So what is the contention between them?
Take it so we're all good.
Well, yeah, but the contention between them has been the blessing. Jacob left having taken what? The blessing. He comes back wanting to give back a blessing. There's a play on the words here, and it's a really significant thing. Not just this present that I'm giving you. I have plenty. I've been blessed. You know, I kind of had the blessing, but I didn't take anything with me, but I took the blessing. Now let me give you blessing back. And so it's really significant what he says here, because what? God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need. You know, because that's what Esau said, keep what you have for yourself. In other words, Esau saying, I have plenty. Jacob's saying, I got plenty too. God has given me, I don't, and what else? So what else is he telling him here?
I don't need anything from you.
Yes, but even on a higher scale, she said, I don't need anything from you. I am not here to claim what? My 2/3 of what you have.
We're equals.
Yep. We're equals. You keep your stuff. I'm entitled to whatever, 2/3 of whatever. Now we know that Isaac's actually not dead yet. So whatever, Isaac is going to have, he's saying, I don't need it. I didn't come back to claim the blessing. I came back to be reunited with you. And so God has blessed me in this other way. I've got my blessing. I don't need it. I have all I need. And then it says, because Jacob insisted that Esau accepted it. So, because if you are not upset with me anymore and accept this as a blessing for me to give your blessing back to you. So, because of both of those things, Esau takes it back. So we will pick up with verse 12 as the story kind of heightens there. So glad you all were with us, and I hope you have a blessed evening and a good evening, and we'll catch you next time around.
Time change.
Oh, time change next Sunday. As far as the clock is concerned, we will be here at the same time. So, but the clocks are going to change.